Hello and welcome to Narayana Eyes. I'm Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, today on Sunday, we have chosen four important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. I know it's Sunday. It must be lazy for you to, study or let's say go through the newspaper. But again, when it comes to UPSC, relaxation is okay. But again, you need to be on your toes. You need to ensure that all the important topics or important articles are covered. So if you're not studied for the day, what I request you is to just listen to the DNA video for let's 45 minutes so that you'll have a good quick idea of the topics or important topics that has appeared in today's newspaper. Right? So before we begin, right, as it's a Sunday, it's very important to be motivated, right? So today's motivation is if you can change your mind, you can change your life. Everything lies in your mind. What you think, so it becomes. So if you think that yes, I have the potential to clear the examination, then all the energies will be channeled so to help you to clear the examination. So always be very careful as in what you're thinking, because your mind is a very powerful weapon. What you feed to your mind, exactly the output will be in proportion to what you're feeding in your mind. So it's very important to have the realization of what you're thinking, what thoughts you're harboring, so that it also affects, or this thing has to be taken care of. Why? Because the output depends on what you're thinking. So always have a positive mindset, always have a clear mindset, and always have the willpower to work hard and clear the examination. So all the students who want to be a part of our 1 year and 2 year program, we are soon launching prelims come integrated. Prelims come means integrated program for students who want to appear next year, or let's say next to next year. So all those students interested can simply scan the QR code available on the screen and fill in the required details. Our team shall get back to you. So these are the four topics that we shall be discussing today. The first article is taken from Hindu, page number 12. Now this article talks about the judicial vacancies, especially in the high courts and also the subordinate courts, and how this is actually affecting the justice delivery mechanism. The second article is taken from Hindu, page number 18. Now here Iran says that it has every right to enrich uranium. So here we'll understand what one understands by the term enrichment of uranium, will understand the basic concept, will understand about the non-proliferation treaty, and also will understand about the International Atomic Energy Agency institution. The third article is taken from Indian Express, page number 13. Now here we'll understand the concept of China plus one strategy and how India is going to benefit from this China plus one strategy. The fourth article is taken from Hindu, page number 14. Here, the topic is microgravity increases core body temperature is what the study has been found out. And here we'll understand the concept of microgravity and how this affects the body temperature. So these are the four topics of the day. Let us start with the first topic. The first topic, the title being chronic judicial vacancies, backlog of cases plague various high courts. Now here we'll understand the concept of judicial backlog, the issue and the suggested solution. And this you can map under mains GS paper 2. In GS paper 2 we have the structure, organization and functioning of the judiciary. Now, why it is important to discuss this topic? Because of its relevance in the examination. For example, a question was asked in the year 2020. So, many questions have been asked on the chapter Judiciary. So, understanding about Judiciary, the problems, challenges, suggested solution, recommendations, very important for the UPSC CSA examination. So, let us start with the context. What is the context? Let us try to understand the context. See, the Indian judiciary is facing two major problems. Two problems. One, not not enough, we do not have enough judges. And then rising number of pending cases. Rising number of pending cases, these are the two problems, and the high courts are under, especially very much under pressure. Why? Because the judge posts are lying vacant and new appointments are also getting delayed, and as a result more and more cases are piling up, and thus this is affecting the justice delivery mechanism. And as I say, justice delayed is justice denied. So this is a problem that we have to address. So this is the context. Let us try to understand the judicial backlog. See, the High Court's pendency spike. As of early 2025, over 62 lakh cases are pending in High Courts, marking a significant increase from previous few years. So this numbers is very, very important to mention in the examination. Overall court system, the district and subordinate courts are burdened with more than 4.5 crore pending cases, reflecting a steady rise in unresolved matters. Here the cases are not getting resolved and more cases are being piled up in the High Court, or for that matter the subordinate court. And if I talk about the Supreme Court trend, now see, the Supreme Court actually saw a small drop in pending cases in early 2025. But overall, the pressure on the judiciary is growing. Judiciary, which means Supreme Court, High Court, and the subordinate court. So even though the top court is managing the cases slightly better, the lower courts are highly overburdened, they are overloaded, and the situation seems to be only worsening. This is about the judicial backlog. Staff crunch, judicial vacancies across the board. Now, vacancy statistics, out of 1,114 sanctioned posts in high courts, only 769 are filled, which means only 70% cases are filled, leaving over 30% of the positions vacant. So, this figures are very, very important for you to mention in the examination. Talking of the Delhi High Court case, operating with just 36 judges against a sanctioned strength of 60. Close to 55%. The Delhi High Court faces a vacancy rate of nearly 40%, managing over 1.34 lakh cases. The worst hit courts, the Allahabad High Court has 81 vacancies out of 160 sanctioned posts and is grappling with over 11.76 lakh pending cases. This is Allahabad High Court is highest among all the other high courts when it comes to less number of judges and more number of cases. So these numbers are very, very important to mention in the examination, especially the mains examination. So what is the impact of vacancy crisis? We have seen the vacancy, we have seen the backlog of cases. So what is the impact? Of course, delayed justice. With fewer judges available, there are fewer benches. Benches, which means it's a group of judges. And so the hearings take long. So less number of judges, less benches, and the hearing takes longer. And this slows both the criminal as well as the civil cases, and this is how the justice is a daily list backlogs. Now, the Delhi High Court said that it cannot hear all the cases listed daily. Why? Because there aren't enough judges. Cases are listed but cannot be heard. Why? Because there aren't enough judges. How problematic the situation is. Reduced disposal rate in 2024, High Court saw 24 lakh cases filed but managed to resolve only 22 lakh, indicating that filings consistently outpace disposal. So this is a number that we have to focus on. This is a number that we have to care about. Why? Because see, what do you mean by disposal rate? Which means how many cases are closed. Now, since more cases are being filed than closed, the backlog only keeps on growing every year. Now, appointment bottlenecks. We have seen that there are vacancies. So what is the issue exactly with respect to appointment? Appointment bottlenecks, which means hurdles, a systemic delay. One is stalled appointments. Now, as of early 2025, 150 High Court's judge appointments are pending due to prolonged decision-making process. Again, the governance is an issue. Why? Because the names that are recommended, the government seems to not approving the names recommended by the collegium. Awaited recommendations. Recommendations for 205 vacant positions are yet to be made by the High Court collegium. Here the government is not accepting, here the High Court is not recommending the names, further delaying the appointment cycle. The third one is the collegium government friction. Now, collegium, it's a system where the judges are appointed. So, we have the Supreme Court collegium for the appointment of judges. In the Supreme Court and High Court, we have the High Court collegium for the appointment of judges in the subordinate courts. But there's an ongoing conflict between the judiciary, collegium and the government executive, and this is actually slowing down the process of appointing the judges. Lack of transparency. Now the people of our country do not clearly know how the judges are appointed, which means there is lack of transparency in the appointment of the judges, and this actually creates mistrust, and this further leads to more and more delays. Need for institutional reform. Now, many experts in our country believe that an independent body like the judiciary appointment, this is what the experts feel. The Judiciary Appointment Commission is needed to make the judge selection faster and more transparent. The current system for selecting judges, it lacks openness and is slowed down by the disagreements between the government and the judges, and that's the reason a separate but neutral body like the Judiciary Appointment Commission can fix the issue of pending cases and vacancies. Next, structural and administrative challenge. Inadequate, less insufficient judge to population ratio. Now, India has one of the lowest judge to population ratio globally, with only 21 judge per million, that is 10 lakh people. So, India has one of the lowest judge to population ratio. So, this number is very important to indicate. And the global average is 50 judges per million people. Infrastructure deficiencies, which means that many courts do not have enough courtrooms, they do not have computers, or they do not have trained support staff. Procedural delays, which means the old laws, frequent adjournments, that is postponement, and slow evidence collection, it causes long delays in the trials, and because of which the under trial people have to spend years in jail. Underutilized, what is ADR? Alternative dispute resolution mechanism. Now, methods like, for example, we have mediation, arbitration, they are not used enough. Now, these methods where the cases are settled outside the court, because when it comes to court, the courts have to follow strict procedure. But the ADR mechanism like mediation, they are guided by the principles of natural justice, and their decisions are also binding. It takes less time. So these methods can solve the disputes faster without full court trials. And this actually can help in resolving the cases at a faster rate. Government as major litigant. Now the government is involved in a large number of court cases, and this increases the burden pressure on the courts. And since the government is involved in many disputes, the courts are becoming overloaded or they are burdened. So these are the challenges. What about the solution? One, how do we rectify the the problem that we all are India? is uh, trapped in one, speedy appointments, which means the process of appointing judges should be made faster to fill the vacant positions. For example, we can have the Judicial Appointment Commission, then we have to increase the judge strength. Again, the number of judges should be increased based on how many cases are pending and how large the population of a state is. Then improving the infrastructure, which means again that's very simple. We need to have more court buildings, we need to have digital tools, we need to have a trained support staff. Then promote ADR mechanism. We just have discussed what exactly is the ADR mechanism. Then implementing the case management reform, which means how the cases are managed. For example, you can use digital tools, set clear deadlines for case stages, and then you can also apply artificial intelligence based tools to help judges in legal research and also faster decision making. The case management reforms, it can include tools to track the status of case so as to prevent delays and also to improve the efficiency of the judges. Next is implementing all India judicial service. Now here we can start a national level recruitment system for judges to ensure quality and quick hiring across states. Now see, the all India judicial service, all India would be like the IS but for judges, so as to maintain consistent standards across the country. And then reform procedural laws. We have to update the outdated legal procedures in both civil as well as criminal cases to speed up the legal process. And finally, the most important is to enhance the accountability, which means we have to regularly assess the judge's performance and also consider forming a judicial accountability commission. And what will be the mandate of this commission? To ensure judges meet quality standards. So this is how we need to move ahead or way forward. See, all in all, you need to remember that urgent reforms needed to restore judicial efficiency is very, very important. India's judiciary, we know, is under immense pressure because too many pending cases and too or far less judges. So reforms like, timely appointments, better court infrastructure, then simpler procedures, ADR mechanism. So these solutions can quickly, reform the judicial system in our country and help people get justice at a or in a less time. This is the content of the first article. Right? I hope you understood the first topic. Let us move on to the next topic. Iran has every right to enrich uranium. In this article, understand the concept of uranium enrichment and implication impact, and what is the concept of non-proliferation treaty. You can map this under both prelims as well as mains. In mains, under paper 2 we have international relations, and under IR we have this subtopic, effect of policies of developed and developing countries on India's interests. Question on US-Iran nuclear pact controversy was asked in the year 2018. So this question is very, very important. So let us try to understand what is the context. First, what is Iran saying? Iran's position? Iran is saying that it has a right to enrich uranium under the international law. It claims its nuclear program is peaceful. To oppose the Iran, we have the Western nations. So Iran is saying it has a right to enrich uranium, and Western countries are worried because Iran is enriching uranium to higher levels and delaying the nuclear talks. They fear that Iran could use this for making nuclear weapons. Iran says it has a right. Western countries feel that if Iran continues enriching uranium, then this can be a big threat not only to the region but to the entire world. So let us try to understand what exactly one understands by the concept of uranium enrichment. Enrichment is a process of increasing the proportion of uranium-235. Now, uranium-235 is very important. In natural uranium, which is essential for both civilian nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. See, uranium-235. This is part of uranium that can release energy during nuclear reactions. So, it's a fissile material. Uranium-235 is a fissile. It releases energy. Natural uranium has only a small amount of uranium-235, and enrichment is nothing but you are increasing the proportion of uranium-235 so that it can help in making nuclear weapons. So, natural uranium only contains 0.7% uranium-235, and enrichment raises this too. So, if you are enriching uranium-235, let's say around 3 to 5%, we can use it to make nuclear energy. If you enrich it to 20% or more is considered highly enriched uranium, and 90% or above is weapons grade uranium. So, if uranium 235 is enriched more than 90%, which means you have nuclear weapon now. So, Iran enriches uranium up to 60%, far above 3.67% limit set in the 2015 nuclear deal between USA and the Western nations. Though Iran has not enriched uranium close to 90%, but it is very close to enriching uranium close to 90%, which means if Iran enriches uranium to 90%, it has the chance or it can make nuclear weapons. See, so I hope you understood this concept. Now, what is this dual use concern? Dual use concern, which means you can use the same uranium enrichment technology can be used for peaceful purpose, that is to generate power, or military purpose, that is to make nuclear bomb. Now, because of this dual use nature, uranium enrichment is watched closely by the international agencies. So, to what extent you are enriching? How do you get to know? So, the international agency, which Atomic International Atomic Energy Agency. This is a nuclear watchdog. What is it? It's a nuclear watchdog. It ensures that all the countries are enriching uranium only up to a limit so as to make electricity and not make nuclear weapons. Weaponization threshold. Now, even though enriching uranium is not the same as making a nuclear weapon, enrichment close to 90% shortens the breakout time. So, if you are enriching close to 90%, you are actually shortening, reducing the breakout time. What is breakout time? Is how quickly a country could make a nuclear weapon if it decides to do so. Now, Iran's current level of enrichment means, which is close to 60%, which means the breakout time is now short, is less now. Then centrifuge technology. Now, this technology, which means this centrifuge technology, are machines used to enrich uranium. This is a technology used to enrich uranium-235. Advanced centrifuges can enrich uranium faster in a smaller space so as to escape the attention of global bodies. This means a country can make enriched uranium quickly and secretly if they have the modern technology. I hope you understood the concept of enrichment of uranium. Next, let's try to understand the concept of NPT, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. See, it is commonly referred to as NPT. Now, NPT is an international treaty. It was signed in the year 1968. 1968, why? The purpose was to stop the spread. Purpose was to stop spread of nuclear weapons. This was the objective. to support the peaceful use of nuclear energy and to promote disarmament. So, to stop the spread of nuclear weapons, support peaceful use of nuclear energy and to promote disarmament. There are three pillars of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. One, non-proliferation, which means under this non-proliferation, only 5 countries. Which are these 5 countries? US, UK, Russia, China, France. Only these 5 countries are allowed to have nuclear weapons. They are officially allowed to have nuclear weapons. Why? Because until 1968, only these 5 countries had nuclear weapons. So these 5 countries are allowed to have nuclear weapons. Peaceful use, which means all the member countries can use nuclear energy for peaceful purpose and not to make nuclear weapons. Peaceful purpose means to generate power or electricity. Disarmament, to promote disarmament, which means nuclear armed countries are expected to work towards reducing and finally remove all nuclear weapons. For example, countries like India, Pakistan, North Korea, these countries are expected to remove all the nuclear weapons. These are the three objectives, goals of NPT. Now, membership. Now, talking at membership, right? Total parties, there are 191. There are total 191 countries who have signed the NPT. Who are the non-members? One is India, Pakistan, Israel and North Korea. These are the 4 countries that haven't signed the NPT. North Korea had signed it, but later it withdrew. Also, we have South Sudan, did not sign it. Right now, North Korea, as I told you, it signed, but later on it withdrew. The question is, why India hasn't signed the NPT? Does it mean that India wants to make nuclear weapons? No. India says the NPT is discriminatory. Why? Because it only allows 5 countries to have nuclear weapons. What is the basis behind this? Why to allow 5 countries? India is not interested to, proliferate nuclear weapons. No, India wants no country should have nuclear weapons. Why only privilege be given to 5 countries? And given that China is a major country, threat to our country, we are not foolish to abide by this principle and completely dismantle nuclear weapons. So India actually believes in equal and universal disarmament and says that NPT is unfair. No country should be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Now let us try to understand about the International Atomic Energy Agency. First, the objective of IAEA. Now see, the IAEA is an international body that promotes peaceful use of nuclear energy. Peaceful use of nuclear energy, and it ensures that nuclear materials, that is uranium, is not used for weapons. So it has this safeguard system, which means this institution IAEA checks nuclear plants in member countries. For example, the 191 countries, it visits these countries and actually inspects under an agreement called Comprehensive Safeguard Agreement. What? Comprehensive Safeguard Agreement. It visits 191 countries to inspect whether all the countries are abiding by the mandate of IAEA. These inspections make sure countries follow the NPT rules. Then there is also additional protocol, and what is that additional protocol? It is a voluntary agreement and gives the IAEA, once you sign this agreement with IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they have extra right to inspect and gather information. Now, please remember, Iran has signed it, but Iran does not cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Talking about the tussle between IAEA and Iran. See, Iran allows the body to inspect its facilities, but there are disputes over limited access, which means it does not allow to inspect the entire area. Why? Because people say that Iran has hidden material. There is lack of openness. Sometimes Iran has also reduced its cooperation, especially when the conflict heightens. Conflict worsens, especially between Iran and the Western countries. So, what is the significance for global security? The significance of IAEA. See, we discussed that the International Atomic Energy Agency, they act as a nuclear watchdog to make sure that the nuclear energy is not being used for making nuclear weapons. This body actually helps to build trust and prevent the nuclear conflict. Role in India? Yes, India has not signed NPT, but India has actually signed a separate agreement with this body under the India-US Civil Nuclear Deal in the year 2005. So, India said that whatever technology will be getting from US, resources, uranium, technology reactor, this body can come and inspect the site anytime. So, we have actually placed 14 nuclear reactors under the civilian category, which means this body can visit these 14 nuclear reactors anytime to ensure whether India is enriching uranium or it is not. This is about International Atomic Energy Agency. Now coming back to the ongoing issue. One, stall talks. There's nothing happening, which means recently the fourth round of talks between Iran and the US has been delayed, which is actually increasing tension not only in the region, West Asian region, but the entire world. Now see, talking about US pressure. US Trump says that Iran must stop enriching uranium because such high levels are only needed for making weapons, nothing else. And what does Iran say? Iran says that it has a right under the NPT to enrich uranium for peaceful purpose. USA says you do not have to enrich so much for making electricity, generating electricity. So this is what the tussle between Iran and the Western country, or for that matter US. Now European Union or European countries, like let's say for example France. France says that Iran is getting close to making weapons. They warn that UN sanctions might return if Iran makes nuclear weapons, and red lines and inspection, which means Iran will not send enriched uranium out of the country. It has also refused to let the United States inspectors to check all its nuclear sites. These are actually national red lines. Now, what do you mean by red lines? They are firm limits that a country will not cross during negotiations. So, this is the essence of the second topic. I hope you understood the second topic, right? So, let us move on to the third topic. India to benefit from China plus one strategy. So we'll understand the concept of China plus one strategy. This you can mark under IR paper 2. So this was a question asked in the 2014. Now let us try to understand the context. Okay. Now, first, now we know that the US under Trump has placed heavy tariffs and trade restrictions on the Chinese goods, right? Now you see, the tariffs are nothing but they are taxes on imports that actually make the foreign goods more and more expensive, right? The US has increased the tariffs so as to pressurize China. So these trade restrictions have disturbed the entire global movement of raw materials and from finished goods. Now see, America has imposed tariffs on the raw materials, which means now the raw materials become expensive, If this is becoming expensive, the finished goods will become expensive, which means inflation, which means no one will buy. It, it will result into slowdown of economy. All right. Now, the pandemic actually, COVID-19, it showed the danger of depending too much on the Chinese for manufacturing. When China shuts down factories during COVID, many global businesses were badly affected. Why? Because no raw materials. And because of trade tensions and COVID, companies have now started for looking other countries. They're looking for other countries besides China to make their products. So they are shifting their manufacturing base from China to other countries because China is a powerful country. It can do whatever it feels like. So in this context, in this regard, let us try to understand the concept of China plus one strategy. What is the core concept of China plus one strategy? See, instead of depending on only China, the global businesses across the world are adding at least one more country for manufacturing besides China. This is referred to as China plus one strategy. They will manufacture in China, but besides China, to reduce their dependence and also sort of have that negotiation power, the companies are trying to find an alternative country. Now, why the global businesses want to diversify? Because China has become risky because of trade wars, US China, then strict regulations, and also increasing labor and production cost. This is the reason the global businesses are diversifying. So companies actually want to spread their risk and not confine only in one country. So India comes as a natural choice. Why? Because India has many strengths. Now, which are the strengths India has? One, a huge workforce, a huge workforce, then improving infrastructure like the roads and ports. Recently we inaugurated Visinjam port. Then political and legal stability, which means that India stands out compared to countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and let's say Mexico. There's political stability, there's consistency in policies. This strategy is evolving, which means earlier the businesses tried this China plus 5. China, now which are the 5 countries under China plus 5? It's the same countries. For example, we have Vietnam, we have Cambodia, the Southeast Asian countries. But now India is also India is actually becoming the main alternative, turning it into China plus 1, which is one India. And what is India's strategic positioning or India's strategy? India is trying to attract the global businesses. How? One, by signing the trade agreement as we signed recently with US companies, making reforms, ease of doing business, and also we are offering incentives to the manufacturers so as to attract the investment. And this is happening because of the investor sentiment shift towards India. There's a growing trust in India. The manufacturing companies, MNCs or the multinational companies are starting to trust India more and more. Why? Because of better business policies, ease of doing business, that is, focusing on leveraging the digital tools and setting up factories or let's say the offices. The global support for diversification, which means in the Western nations, they also want to reduce their dependence on China. That's the reason they're supporting companies that invest or they're pushing the companies to invest in India. So India's efforts to leverage the opportunity. How is India trying to take advantage? One, India is negotiating free trade agreement with countries like let's say US, UK, or let's say France, right? Or let's say the European Union. See, the free trade agreements, they actually make trade easier. How? By reducing or by removing the taxes on imports and exports so that the Indian products can reach the foreign markets more and more easily. Support for manufacturing, structural reforms. Now, India has launched schemes like production linked incentive to support companies that make goods in India, which means the PLI scheme. This actually gives financial rewards to companies that increase their production in certain sectors, like for example textiles. Why? Because we have many people working in the textile sector, or let's say electronics. The economic advisory push. Now you see that India's chief economic advisor has asked the developed countries and the businesses in those countries to invest more urgently in India, and we are ready to do whatever you need in terms of simplifying the process. So there is long term focus. India doesn't want to just be a backup option. It wants to be a permanent hub in the entire global manufacturing ecosystem. But having this vision and also understanding the challenges is very, very important. Now, what are the challenges? One, yes, infrastructure. We are lacking in infrastructure. There has been progress, but still India needs to improve on the roads, the ports, the electricity supply to match the global standards or countries like, let's say, Vietnam, Singapore, or let's say Mexico. Then labor market issues. Now here, if you see, India actually faces two major problems. One, the complex labor laws. Complex labor rules or laws. And this actually makes it hard for businesses to hire and manage workers. Then there are skill gaps, which means the gaps that the workers or workforce has is not meeting the standard or need of the modern industries. So these are the problems that we have. Need for policy consistency. Now investors, what they want is they want clear and consistent policies, so that tomorrow if a government changes, the business should not affect. And then there is global competition. For example, countries like Singapore, Mexico, Vietnam, these countries are actually trying hard to attract the global companies to invest in their countries, and they are offering incentives like India is offering PLI scheme. Even they are offering many incentives like, let's say, tax cuts, or let's say they are providing land at a very cheap rate to the company so as to attract the investment. So this is about the third topic. Let us move on to the next topic, which is the fourth topic. Microgravity increases core body temperature. This is what the IIST study sees. So we'll understand about the microgravity. Now, what is the context? Now see, we know that the astronauts are going on longer space missions, the Gaganyaan mission, we know that. And this actually makes it very important to keep their bodies healthy during the space travel. Now, this actually was manifested during the recent space visit by Sunita Williams and her team, the NASA team. One big problem is to control the body heat. How to control the body heat in space? This is one major problem. Now, this is a problem. Why? Because of the concept called microgravity. Now, the researchers at the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, this is in Trivandrum, this is in Tiruvananthapuram, they actually invented a computer model. Now, what this model does is, this model helps us understand how the space conditions they affect the body temperature. What? Space condition and how it affects the body temperature. And this is actually a big step in studying the health of astronauts in space. So first and foremost, let us try to understand the concept of microgravity. Means condition where the force of gravity is extremely low, not zero. It is extremely low. See, this means that gravity is not zero but very small. For example, gravity on Earth pulls us down very strongly, right? In space, the pull becomes very weak. There is gravity, but it is very, very, very low. So things actually float and not settle on the ground. Where it happens, it occurs in outer space or in orbiting spacecraft where astronauts float around. You must have seen pictures, right? The astronauts floating, right? Why it matters? Because microgravity changes how the body works. It affects the blood flow, muscles, bones, and now, as shown in the study, even the body temperature too. So the computer model, the researchers at the IST invented is a digital system, right, made using a computer to simulate or copy how something works. Right. Now, in this case, the model shows how the human body is reacting to space conditions like microgravity. So, it is actually simulating so that we can be better prepared. So, I hope you understood what is microgravity. Now, what are the key findings of the study? One, increased core temperature. Now, here the scientists have found that in microgravity, the astronaut's core body temperature rises more than normal. Even light physical activity, let's say sitting or standing, it makes them hotter than or compared to that on Earth. And what is the reason for this heat build up? Now the reason is that in space the body cannot release heat easily. This is because the blood flow changes due to microgravity. We discussed that how the space condition is actually affecting the flow of the blood, and this actually blood flow changes due to microgravity. The sweat that comes out, it does not evaporate properly, which is how we usually cool down on Earth. We know this is how the body temperature is cooled with the help of sweat, but here the sweat is not evaporating. So this is the problem. Then about the use of 3D model. So the scientists at IST, they have actually made a virtual 3D model of a human body, and this model shows how the heat moves inside the body and how the body reacts. Like for example, you are either sweating or you are shivering, and tested on multiple scenarios, which means now this model was tested on different body types like body which is thin, body which is heavy, different health conditions, and also different space environment, because the environment in the space is not uniform, right? So this was studied. Now why this study is important? Why? Because it to protect the health of the astronauts. If the body gets too hot, it can cause fatigue, dehydration, other health problems during long missions. That's the reason we need to be prepared in case the health suffers, then we need to also have the solution available. Use for space agencies. Space agencies like NASA or let's say our ISRO, right? Now these space agencies can use this study to, one, to design the space suits, the space suits that the astronauts wear, to plan safe exercise, and also to set daily routines for astronauts so as to be in sync or so as to ensure that the space condition is not affecting the body. And again, the benefits like this model can also help in hospitals to study how patients handle heat, then in sports to improve the performance of the athlete, and also in the industry sector where people work in high temperatures. So there are benefits outside the space sector to hospitals, sports, and industries. So that's the topic all about. And this brings us to the end of the fourth topic. Let's go through the questions now. The question, the mounting vacancies in the Indian judiciary are a significant impediment to access to justice. Critically examine the causes, impacts and suggest systemic reforms. Again, very simple question. So, in the introduction, mention about the judicial vacancies, the inadequate number of judges and how this affecting the justice delivery mechanism. You can mention a statistics to strengthen your argument in the introduction. In the body, very simple, first the causes of the judicial vacancies, then the impacts of vacancies, and finally the way forward. These are the points that we already have discussed in the first topic. So you can revise the first topic, rehear the first topic in order to be prepared to write answer for this question. Now these are the questions based on the DNA topics that we discussed yesterday. With reference to multilateral development banks, consider the following statements. The new development bank was established by the G20. No, it was developed by the BRICS nations. So this one is incorrect. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is headquartered in Beijing and India is also founding member. Yes, this one is correct. Option B is the correct answer for question number 2. Now this asks about the key objectives behind the development of the Vizhinjam International Depot. To position India as a global transshipment hub by reducing reliance on foreign ports. Yes. To create a tourism centric port. No, this is nothing to do with tourism centric. Wrong. So 2 minus 2. So option correct answer is option B. Again, you can also read the other statements too. With reference to Bhakra Nangal project and the Bhakra Bias Management Board, consider the following statement. Bhakra Dam is located in Punjab. No, it is located in Himachal Pradesh and is built on the Bias. No, it is located on the Satluj River. This board functions under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. No, Ministry of Power. It manages water and power distribution among 5 states and union territories. Yes, option A is the correct answer. And then we have this DNA questions based on today's topics. One is uranium enrichment, China +1 strategy, microgravity. That's the end of today's DNA session. I hope you understood all the 5 topics that we have discussed. Any question, any doubt, feel free to ask in the comment section. And make sure you're also forwarding the DNA videos to your friends who are in need of quality current affairs videos. So before I call it a wrap, I request you to please hit the like, subscribe and share icon as much as possible. Thank you so much for watching and have a great weekend.